Story 1. My wife left me when I was caring for my dying father. But when he made me a millionaire in his will, she came back crawling. I'm 36M, married for 8 years with 2 children. Along with this, I'm the only son of my ailing father. You see, my dad has been suffering from kidney problems for many years now, but in the last 2 to 3 years, his condition has worsened, and he has to go for dialysis twice a week. Earlier, he was able to commute on his own, but over the last year, he often asked me to accompany him. He is also growing weaker every day. Now, I have made a routine for myself that I would be taking my father for dialysis every time. I don't want to leave him alone in this condition. He has to go for dialysis 2 days a week, so I have fixed Saturday and Wednesday. Saturday is my week off, so it's not a concern. For Wednesday, I got permission from my boss to leave early and then compensate for the remaining hours by working late at night after returning home from the dialysis. I've been working in this company for 10 years. My boss has seen me as a hardworking and loyal employee, so granting this special permission wasn't a big deal for him. However, the problem was at home with my wife AAL, 34F. When she got to know that I would be taking my dad for dialysis twice a week, she got upset. She didn't like it when I used to take him occasionally, but she never expressed her displeasure up front. Now that I had taken up the responsibility diligently, she could not stop herself. She said that there was no point wasting my time on my father because whatever I did, he was never going to be impressed by me. Well, here's a little context to this. My dad owned a merchandising business. He was quite well off and had acquired decent wealth. He wanted me to take over his business, but I was passionate about something else. I wanted to get into technology. I was enthusiastic about coding and creating software, so after school, when Dad wanted me to take up some business or management courses, I took up a software degree. He was still fine with that until I was willing to join his company. However, after completing my graduation, I started working for a renowned tech firm. Dad wasn't happy that instead of taking forward his legacy, I was working for someone else. He kept asking me to join his business and I kept stalling it. After my marriage, Dad asked me the final time if I wanted to join, and I said no. Dad got furious and said he would give all his wealth to the charity, and I wouldn't get a penny. I still didn't budge from my decision. You see, I was earning well even at that age. I bought a car and my own house at the age of 29. I was pretty confident that I would be able to lead a decent life even without his wealth. I told him that I didn't need his money and could build wealth on my own. Our relationship soured after that point. 5 years back, my mom passed away due to cardiac arrest. It was devastating for Dad. You see, I moved out of the house at 17 for college, got a job, and started living on my own. The only companion Dad had was Mom, and losing her was the most devastating thing for him. That's when our bond rejuvenated. I started visiting him often and used to take my kids to play with him. Eventually, he stepped down from his company and gave it to a trust to run. My wife AL was never close to my parents until my mother was here. AL used to avoid visiting my parents, saying that my mother was too nosy in our lives, and they didn't get along with each other. When my father announced that he would remove me from his will, AL started openly criticizing my parents for being mean and evil. I insisted she stay away from my relationship with my parents, but she always stepped in and said it was something that was going to affect our future, especially our children's. I assured her that ours and our children's future are secure irrespective of Dad's wealth, but she was not willing to understand that. Now, coming to the current situation, AL created a fuss when she got to know that I would be accompanying Dad for dialysis twice a week. Initially, I tried to make her understand that Dad had no one but me. He lost his parents long back, and though he has an elder brother, he lives on the other end of the city and rarely visits Dad. Dad has become very lonely after Mom's demise, and in this condition, I cannot abandon him. But my wife refuses to understand this. Of late, she had made my life miserable every Saturday. She comes up with some plans, whether it is hosting a party at the house, deep cleaning the house, outing with the children, or as stupid as grocery pickup. I made her understand that she could plan anything she wanted on Sundays because on Saturdays, I have to take Dad for dialysis, but she continues with her plans and then later rebukes me for being late or missing it. I had to rush to my dad to pick him up, then take him to the dialysis center, and after it was done, I dropped him and ran back home to her sarcasm and tantrums. It is not just about Saturday. She does the same for Wednesday evening. I had committed to my boss that I would compensate for the remaining work late in the evening or in the night after returning from the dialysis, but she always had a plan to trouble me almost every Wednesday evening. She would go out either to meet her family and her long-lost friends or to attend some random party, leaving the children's responsibility to me. I had to juggle my work, cook for the children, feed the younger one, and meanwhile complete my pending tasks at my workplace. This was after a hectic day at work and at the dialysis center. I know it's getting long, but this is how miserable my condition is. Many times my dad suggested that I let him go to the center with the nurse because he sees me always in a hurry, intense, looking at my watch after dropping him home. I don't even wait for a second and rush back. Even while picking up, I ask him to be ready and come outside before I arrive. Dad has a full-time nurse and a caretaker to take care of him, but I still feel bad for not spending time with him. The drive from his house to the center is 30 minutes. Earlier, I used to enjoy chatting with him during that drive about the good old days of children, but as AL's tantrums have increased, all I'm concerned about is rushing back home. Most of the time, I'm just overspeeding my car in the traffic, taking shortcut lanes, and overtaking other vehicles to cut down the drive time. This is the only time I get to spend with Dad, and I don't want to ruin that or stop it by asking him to go with the nurse. I too have some responsibilities as a son. I'm just not able to bear this woman any longer. Update 1. It is just getting worse every day. My wife is not leaving any stone unturned to dissuade me from attending my father. Her point is that it is a lost deal. Dad had already removed me from his will and had given his wealth to charity, so there was no point wasting time and energy on him. I failed to understand her. Do we do everything just for profit and loss? What if someone's parents don't have any wealth or are poor? Do their children abandon them because they have nothing to offer? After listening to her tantrums for so many months, I finally told her that she was not going to inherit anything from her parents. So why does she visit them every now and then? Oh my God. She lost her shit at this and said, "My parents did a lot more than your greedy father. They supported me in everything. They are not like your father, who disowned you for not joining his business. My father would have never done that to me, so don't you dare compare my parents to yours." It was not just once. This type of argument is becoming a norm at my house almost every Wednesday and Saturday after I return from dialysis, just that it is getting severe and ugly at every instance. Earlier, she used to fight with me alone. Now, I see her yelling and shouting at me in front of the children. Not only this, I have heard her bad-mouthing my dad in front of my children and manipulating them against me and my dad. I heard it and intervened, which again led to an ugly fight between us. AL's fight has become a routine for me on the days when she doesn't fight. I feel something is missing. Only she becomes more aggressive the next day. I've almost given up on her now. I don't yell back and answer her. I just ignore her as if she doesn't exist for me. What else should I do? I cannot abandon my father just to please her. I don't care if he has kicked me out of his will. He did so because of my own decision. I refused to join his company. He was forced to give his hard-earned business to the trust. It must have been so disheartening for him that the company was a baby to my dad, and he had to donate it to someone else. He had all the right to disown me because I had hurt him. I sometimes feel that karma is biting me back because I had hurt my dad. On the other hand, Dad is becoming weaker. He is barely able to walk on his own. He needs support to step him down to the car. To save time, I used to ask him to come outside, and I'd drop him outside the house, but now I don't care about being late. I go inside to carefully walk him to the car and then drop him to his bed until he settles down peacefully. He is also having shortness of breath, so I make sure to walk him as slowly as he wants. Also, while driving, I drive carefully so as not to overspend and increase his heart rate. I didn't care about going late to my house because rushing to the house was also not helping if I had to deal with that evil woman. Why not at least keep Dad happy? My casual attitude has worsened the situation, and yesterday AL said that I need to choose one of them, either my dad or her. I tried to make her understand that Dad was not going to be with us forever. Seeing his condition, it didn't look like he was going to make it long. She came back with a curt reply. In that case, you need to make your choice carefully. Someone who is going to be with you forever or someone who is going to die soon. This was so insensitive. I told her, you know what? I better choose my dad than choose you, who is so evil and selfish to a dying man. She packed her bags and left. I didn't even stop her. She needed some time to cool off, and I also needed some space from her. In her absence, I'm taking care of the house, my children, my dad, and my work. Yet, I feel so relieved, so relaxed. Her absence is actually soothing to me. The day before yesterday, she sent me a divorce paper. I was somewhere expecting it but didn't anticipate it to be coming so soon. I was shocked, but deep down, I was happy and relieved. I didn't call her, just signed the papers and sent her back. Surprisingly, she didn't ask for the custody of the children. That was the only clause I was worried about, but she clearly didn't want them. When she received the paper, she called me back, yelling, "How could I just sign it without calling her and pleading with her?" Funny, right? Her mom snatched the phone and shouted that I should have acted like a man and tried to pacify his wife back into the marriage instead of just signing the papers. It was so funny. Why would I do that? She wanted a divorce and I complied. I was like, it was good for me. I got rid of her without a fuss. I also taunted her that she even abandoned her children and didn't want them. She said I could have all my assets, including my 2 children. She didn't want any of it. Her mother said Al was still very young and she didn't want the baggage of children on her shoulders. I said, fine by me. I'm glad to have my kids with me. It is a relief for me, no doubt, but I'm worried about my children. They miss their mom, mostly the younger one. When I'm at the office, it is difficult for me to manage all the responsibility alone, but I hope I'll be able to sail through this. Update 2. It's going to be a shorter update. So, I shifted to Dad's house along with my children. It is a great move, I must say. Thanks to everyone for the lovely suggestion. It worked out. Moving with Dad was good for all of us. Dad got the company of my children, and they got their grandpa to play with. Dad had a full-time caregiver who was ready to take care of my children on a raise. Why not? Someone to take care of my children under my dad's supervision. The best deal, right? It is such a happy feeling to see Dad playing and laughing with my children and them enjoying themselves with their grandpa. Al didn't think this to be coming. She wanted to make my life miserable by divorcing me. She thought I would not be able to juggle all the responsibilities together, taking care of the children, my dad, house, and work. But you see, all is set perfectly. I'm definitely having the last laugh. The divorce was the best thing ever. LOL. Update 3. It's a sad news. Dad passed away last week in his sleep. He went to bed happy and content after playing with my children and never woke up again. The doctor said he died peacefully. The doctor, his nurse, and even his caretaker said Dad was happy after I moved in with him, and it actually increased his lifespan to these many months. He was already on the verge of giving up before I moved in. It is very sad to lose your only parent, but I'm glad that he got to spend the last few months of his life happily. My children are also very sad to lose him, but Dad has imparted good values to them. They say that Grandpa used to teach them to accept reality and move on. Life never stops for anyone. I feel so proud to hear such good things from them. They are indeed my strength in this moment of despair. But there is one more shocking news that came after Dad's demise. Dad's lawyer reached out to me, asking me to come over to his office to reveal Dad's will. I said it wasn't required. Dad had already told me that he had given all his wealth to the trust, so I'm fine with that, and he can proceed with the paperwork to transfer everything to them. I asked him if I needed to vacate Dad's house because I was guessing that also was given to the charity trust. He laughed at me and asked me to just come over. When I went there, I found the trust members were already present. The lawyer had called them as well. When the lawyer started reading the will, I was in tears. Dad has actually willed me as heir all his business, his house, his wealth was for me. I asked the lawyer if this change was made recently. I thought he made this change after I started taking care of him. The lawyer smiled and said I was always his heir and the will was never altered. I was inconsolably crying that my dad never abandoned me. Maybe he threatened to disown me so that I could take forward his business and his legacy. I was still crying when Dad's attorney pacified me, saying it killed him from inside that I hurt my dad all his life, but he always cared for me. The lawyer said that Dad was actually very proud that I didn't give up on my passion under his pressure, and that I was happy to lose my generational wealth to pursue my passion. Dad was very proud of me. The lawyer said that I'm the decision maker of the business, and if I want, I can take the company back from the trust and run it myself. I'm thinking of doing that. I did whatever I wanted to do. Dad indirectly supported me. Now it was my time to pay him back. I'm thinking of taking it back from the trust and scaling it to the level Dad wanted his business to fly. I came back home and told my children about their grandpa's will. He has given some portion of his wealth to my children as well after they turn 18. Today we went to his grave with some flowers and spent some time in serenity. It is a very emotional phase for me. Update 4. The ants came back running on seeing the sugar candy a month later to Dad's demise. I started taking over his business and other community service work. First of all, I quit my job and took over the business. Then I rented my house because my children and I decided to live at my parents' house. They feel connected to their grandpa in this house. This house has my childhood memories, so I also don't want to leave it. With this news that I had inherited my father's $1 million wealth, I got many visitors at my house, long-lost relatives, friends, and neighbors. But the most surprising visitor was my ex-wife Al and her parents. They entered the house sobbing that they didn't know about my father's demise, or else they would have attended the funeral. Her parents went on to say all good things about my dad. Al hugged the children and cried about how much she missed them. I asked her if she missed them so much, and why didn't she visit them in the last 7 to 8 months. She said she went to our house, but it was locked. What a BS. I was like, weren't you worried about your children when you saw the house was locked? Didn't you feel it necessary to contact me and check if the kids were fine? She had no answer. Her parents were like, let's forget whatever has happened in the past. Now that my father was gone, the children would be left alone in the house when I was at work. They need a mother, so it was better that we reconcile. I laughed at their face at this suggestion. The children needed her the most when she left them to me. Now the children have gotten used to her absence, and I don't want her back in my life. She started crying. Her parents left us alone. She held my hands and pleaded with me for reconciliation. She said she loved me and missed being with the children. I laughed and said, you know what? You don't love me. You love the wealth my dad left to me. You and your greedy parents are here on my door just to leech on my money. I don't regret using those words for her parents because that's what they are. She also called my dad greedy and mean during our divorce. There was no way I was letting this woman have a penny of my dad's hard-earned money. She got offended that I had abused her parents. She said, until now, she was pleading with me because she loved me, but now she would take what is rightfully hers. She didn't demand any alimony for the divorce, but now she needs half of my wealth, rather than half of my dad's wealth. I told her she could do whatever she wanted. I'll destroy her, but not give a penny. She abused me and left. I discussed this with my lawyer about this possibility. He said that her chances were slim. The divorce had settled a year before I got the inheritance. Besides, the children were with me, so there was no way she could get anything. But he also asked me to be careful about letting her spend time with the children. She could manipulate them and file for their custody, and then later use them to demand money for their maintenance and all that. I couldn't be more thankful to him for this advice. I'm going to supervise their meeting. I'm also spending a lot of time with the kids these days to help them cope with the loss, so that they don't run to their mommy for emotional support. I've undertaken my dad's company, so it gives me a lot of flexibility to manage my well-being and personal life. I'm planning to take the kids on a vacation in the Bahamas. Yeah, why not? They deserve this lavish vacation. No, it's not about overspending my dad's wealth. I could have also afforded it, but I didn't have the time earlier juggling work and taking care of Dad. Now that I want to take them out. As far as Al is concerned, she hasn't contacted me since their last visit. I think she is busy knocking on every lawyer's office to file a suit against me. Now on to the next story. Story 2. I want to leave my girlfriend who was raped. I realize right up front that I'm going to come across as a jerk, and I will probably get lots of hate for this, but I'm looking for all points of view. Also, this is going to be very long because I just don't know what to leave out, and honestly, I need to vent some. Here is the story. A year ago, actually a year and a month ago, my girlfriend was raped as she was leaving work. Thankfully, she was not killed. However, her attacker did threaten her with a weapon. Fortunately, the store she works at had cameras in the parking lot, and between them getting video of the attack and the bank across the street getting the attacker's car on camera, the police were able to catch him within a day. Between the video and DNA testing, he did not even contest. He just pleaded guilty in exchange for not receiving the maximum. Since there were aggravating circumstances, the weapon, the judge gave him a 20-year sentence, and with time for good behavior, he can be out in about 10 years, give or take. I tell you all of that to make it clear that her attacker is no longer a threat. She doesn't have to fear him coming back for her, at least for 10 years or so. Obviously, this was a very traumatic event in her life, and while I was not a victim per se, it was also very traumatic for me as well. I can't imagine what she has gone through, and I don't compare my situation to hers at all, but I have had severe bouts of depression because I couldn't protect her, and knowing someone else was harming her sometimes was almost more than I could handle. Right after the incident, she did not want to see me. I get that it hurt, but I understood. Her parents picked her up from the hospital, and I did not see or hear from her for a week, which I sort of get, but I think I could have gotten a text or something just saying she was okay. Finally, a week later, her sister calls me and lets me know that she is staying with her parents, and she will be calling me in a couple of days. She never called me. Instead, I once again get a text from her sister saying she would like me to come over for a few minutes so we can talk. I get up and go over, and I'm greeted at the door by her mother, who very calmly and very coldly starts laying out to me how I am to act and what I am to say. I am further instructed to not attempt to make any physical contact with her, as in hug or anything. Okay, again, I get it, major trauma. I'm sure they have been coached by therapists, counselors, or something in what to say and do around her, so I play along. I walk in, and she is sitting on a chair with her dad standing next to her and her sister sitting on the couch. As I walk in the room, the sister starts talking and telling me that my girlfriend wants me to know that she is okay, but obviously she has been traumatized and appreciates my understanding in her recovery. She never said one single word to me and barely looked at me. Again, this was right after the event, and I'm understanding that this is how it has to be, but honest to God, that entire conversation was just awkward as hell. I leave, go home, and attempt to focus on how I can help her. I start Googling how to deal with a rape survivor and what I can expect. She starts going to therapy initially 2 times a week, then after 2 months it goes down to 1 day a week. In the meantime, she finally makes contact with me and asks to meet at a coffee shop. I get there and she is already there and waiting. At this point in time, they had her so medicated that I was dealing with a zombie for the most part. There was no emotion, and she was very methodical in her speech. Basically, she wanted to get together that day to tell me that she couldn't go out with me for a while until she got past some issues she was dealing with. Of course, I told her I understood. This was almost a month after the attack, and this was our first conversation by ourselves, so I was already living under this assumption. I told her I would be there for her and that whatever she needed, whether that be space or a shoulder to cry on or anything, I was there for her. I started to tell her that I loved her, and she stopped me. She told me that right now she didn't want to hear that, and that I had to respect her wishes. I was once again a little hurt and frankly surprised, but I said whatever she wanted. She starts texting me the next day, little things, nothing important, but I think it is a big step in getting back to where we were. This goes on for another month and a half. I finally asked her at the month-and-a-half mark if we could meet for dinner. She didn't reply for 2 days and then said that she had to wait for her to talk to her therapist. Finally, she agrees to this but sets the date for another month away. Now mind you, this is almost 4 months after the attack, and so far I've had 1 physical conversation with her in person and 1 bizarre conversation with her and her family. Oh yay, I need to mention this. I am not being updated on her progress by anyone. Granted, I realize that I am not officially family nor am I entitled to anything, but it would have been nice to just get a text or call or something from someone telling me that she was doing good in therapy or was not or anything. We go out to eat at a small bistro that we ate at all the time. I met her there and I was waiting for her to show up. After sitting for a half-hour waiting, I text to see what was up. I just get a text of "on my way." She finally arrives and sits down. I ask her how she has been, and she snapped at me and told me to not ask her personal questions. We ate, and after dinner I wanted to just sit and talk because I missed the person I had talked to almost every day for the previous 3 years. But when she was done eating, she said that she was ready to go home. I asked her if she could stay for just a few minutes to talk, but I could see that she was becoming physically anxious, and I did not want to upset her. So I said that I loved her and missed her. She just walked away. She goes back to texting me the next day like nothing had been wrong. We actually start to see each other once a week for lunch, and she is getting more and more comfortable with being out, so she sits and talks a while. She has also started a new job, which she tells me about. This goes on for another 4 months. I'm happy to see her and all, but honestly, I'm very lonely, and we have not even so much as held hands. Then one day, she doesn't show up for lunch. I text to see if she is okay. No reply. I call her parents to see if they know where she is and to make sure she is okay. I got the runaround from them, and by this time, I'm starting to get upset because I don't want to know where she was at or anything. I just wanted to know if she was okay. After actually saying that, her mom says, "Yes, she is okay, but don't expect to hear from her for a while." Well, that makes me start to think she has had a relapse and is in the hospital, but what can I do? All I do is go home and try and take my mind off of it. 2 weeks pass with nothing from anybody. I'm trying my best to be reasonable here, but basically, I call her sister and ask if she is still alive or what she knew. I was getting frustrated, so she apologizes, but that her sister told them to specifically not let me talk to her. At this point, I break down. I don't know what I've done wrong here. I have not pushed her. I have not tried to get her to be with me in any way other than to just talk to me, and even then I've had very generic conversations so as to not upset her. I then get a text from her asking if I would meet with her at an address I wasn't familiar with, but once I looked it up, I determined this was a therapist's office. I am told to be there at 4, which meant I had to leave work early to get there. I check in at the front desk, and I'm told that the therapist wants to speak to me alone for a few minutes. She comes in, and I now know where the parents were getting this from because after formally greeting me, she then started to provide me with a list of do's and don'ts. She then told me that my GF wanted to speak to me and had something to tell me. I go in, and she is sitting on one chair, and I am instructed to sit in the other. She has a box of tissues and has been crying. The therapist tells me that I am here because my girlfriend has something to tell me and that she wanted the safety of the therapist's office to feel safe. She then proceeds to tell me that the reason she did not meet me for lunch that day is because she was with another guy, somebody from her new job, and that they had been intimate with each other. She might as well have taken a weapon out and shot me. It couldn't have hurt anymore. I just dropped my head and begin to cry. The therapist then pipes in with some gobbledygook about her taking back her sexuality since she was attacked and how this wasn't cheating in the same sense of cheating. My girlfriend then proceeds to tell me that she does not want to lose me and that she is just very messed up in the head and that it was a one-time thing and blah blah blah. I feel very trapped at that moment. I felt like I was ganged up on, and the more I set the madder I got. I finally just said to her, "You haven't so much as held my hand in the past half year, yet you can go fuck some guy you met at work while I sit like an idiot waiting for my junior high-like date." This, of course, caused her to go into hysterics, and the therapist asked me to leave. I apologized and told her to text me if she wants to keep working this out. I get that text later that day. Now she is all chatty and crap, telling me that this was the worst mistake of her life and please talk to her. I tell her that I don't know if I can go on with this, but agree to meet her. I flat out tell her right up front when I see her that for me to even consider going forward with this, that she has to cut this other guy off, period. She tells me that is impossible because they work together, and I tell her that I'm sorry, but I won't even consider it if she is going to see this guy every day. She decides to find another job, and after talking with my sister, who I have told everything to, she said that while it is not common, some women do attempt to have intimacy after being attacked so that they feel like they have power again. Now why I'm not the one who she did this with, I have no idea, but I know I feel like I'm being punished for something I did not even do. She changes jobs and we go back to our lunches, and I do this twice when I tell her that I'm getting a little tired of just meeting for lunch and doing nothing else, so she agrees to come over to watch TV with me. That has been it up until tonight. Tonight she came over and we watched 2 movies and ate pizza. During the second movie, I tried to give her a kiss, nothing more. Just a kiss. She backs away as though I was a cross and she was a vampire and tells me she is not ready for that yet. Okay, not my finest moment here, I admit, but I tell her that it's been a year and a month, and I have not tried one goddamn thing with her or forced her into anything, and yet she willingly had some other guy months ago, but here I'm still waiting to hold hands. She, of course, starts crying, but this time I'm not as fast to apologize. I do apologize for the tone of my voice and tell her that I would never try and force her to do anything against her will, but honestly, I feel like I've been kept on the outside. I've been cheated on. I don't give two craps what they call it. She willingly had unprotected intimacy with someone else, and I feel like I've done everything to try and be a supportive boyfriend. I tell her that honestly, I don't want her to text me until I decide what I'm going to do. I don't want to be unfair to her, but by the same token, a year is a long time, and we are really no closer to being back to normal than we were 6 months ago, and I have no idea how long this will go on. Now here is the part where if you didn't think I was a jerk before, you will now. I am just tired of not having intimacy. Look, I certainly understood not trying anything right afterwards and even months afterwards, but it's been over a year, and we're not even holding hands, and frankly, the fact that she has been with someone else since this incident is killing me inside. So I told her that I'm going to think things through and promise to talk with her next week sometime. But as it stands tonight, I think I'm done. I love her. I hate the idiot who ruined both of our lives. I know this isn't her fault, and I hate that I feel like crap no matter what I do. If I stay, I'm going to be resentful, and even if she comes over tomorrow and has intimacy with me, it will feel like either pity intimacy or desperation intimacy. But I know ending this will be punishing her for something that isn't her fault either. Advice? My God, this is way too long. TLDR. GF was raped over a year ago. In the meantime, I have given her space and let her deal with things as she deems fit. We have not been together intimately since the attack. She, on the other hand, has been with another guy since. I think I'm done but looking for advice. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My name is Sarah, and 3 days ago I celebrated my 20th birthday. I live with my mom, stepdad, and stepsister. My stepsister is 15 years old, but she's the worst 15-year-old I've had the misfortune of meeting. She's arrogant, mean, and always tries to compete with me. We hate each other and always have because she's just a crappy human being. That's all. My dad passed away when I was 3 years old, and I barely have any memories of him, but I do have plenty of memories of fighting with my mom from my childhood, which made me think that had my dad still been around, I would have had an easier time growing up with my mom. She married my stepdad when I turned 16, and he moved in with us, but she'd been with him since I was 13. So after 3 years of dating, they got married and moved in together. Even before their marriage, my stepsister was a total brat, and once my stepdad moved in, she became much more difficult to tolerate because she was now 10 times more annoying and constantly kept trying to take a dig at me and pick fights. I told my mother about this several times and even complained about her behavior to her dad, but they dismissed it as normal sibling rivalry and refused to interfere as they believed that she'd grow out of it. But I knew the real reason that they wouldn't interfere was because my stepsister was the golden child of the family for both of them. Of course, my stepdad would always take her side since she was his biological daughter, but even my mother would go out of her way for her, and that was what really hurt because she'd never do that for me. Growing up with my mom, I realized that we were fundamentally different people, and she didn't like it one bit. I was a little tomboyish as a kid and was more into sports, games, and cars, while my mother wanted me to learn makeup right from the age of 7, learn to do my hair, and wear dresses instead of my shorts. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these things, but they just weren't me, and I didn't feel like I could properly express myself if I was constantly trying to impress my mom, and that led to a lot of fights between us. She always pushed me to do more feminine things when I didn't want to and just be a mini-her all the time, but I didn't like that and would fight back. I was my own person, but she never understood that, let alone respected. But my stepsister was the kind of daughter she'd always wanted, which is why I guess she took a liking to her instantly, and that really broke me even as a teen because here I was trying my best to make my mother like me for who I am, and suddenly this girl comes along and takes her away from me. For my stepsister, my mom became the mother that I'd always wanted, and there was really nothing sadder than that for me. It was bad enough that my mom was now on her side, and my stepsister would make it even worse with her arrogant behavior. I just couldn't stand her and wanted to leave for college as soon as I could. So I was really happy on my 18th birthday because I graduated from high school, and soon enough, I'd be on my way to the college of my choice. I already had a sports scholarship in the bag because I play lacrosse, and I'm supposed to make the move in the fall, so I'm all set to leave this place behind. That's why I'd expected my mother to surprise me for my 18th birthday, since this will be the last one I'd be celebrating at home with her. This year onwards, I'd only come back home for the holidays, so I expected some enthusiasm from her. But I guess I'd forgotten just how unwelcome I was ever since my stepsister came along. I was a fool to expect anything at all. Not only had my mother not done anything special for me, but in the afternoon when the house was empty, she sat me down to have an important discussion about the future. She told me that my stepsister was supposed to start college in a few years' time, and since she wasn't a student athlete, she wouldn't have a sports scholarship as I did, and her grades weren't good enough for her to qualify for an academic scholarship either, which meant that she'd have to pay her tuition in full. So my mother now wanted me to help pitch in for my stepsister's college fund, or else I wouldn't be welcome to live here anymore. I was shocked by that last bit, and when I asked her to repeat herself, she explained that she and my stepdad had decided that they'd start saving up for my stepsister's college fund now to avoid any financial trouble in the future. And since I was an adult now, they expected me to contribute as well, or else they wouldn't let me live here anymore. As a member of this household, I had to pitch in or leave permanently. I was stunned that she was even making this demand because obviously, I wouldn't be able to help, and to say that they would cut me off if I didn't help my horrible stepsister out was just nuts. I couldn't believe that my mother was saying this, and I could literally feel my stomach drop because of how serious she seemed about this. I didn't know what to say to her at that point, and I definitely didn't want to fight with her, so I told her I needed some time to think and went back to my room. My mom's a nurse, and my stepdad is a pediatrician. Both of them work at the same hospital, and that's how they met as well. I don't know what their exact income is, but I'm sure they make enough money to support my stepsister without getting me involved and making me support her as well. It was just ridiculous that she even asked me to contribute, and for someone who doesn't even like me. If my stepsister and I had a good relationship, then I might have even considered it, but she was a horrible human being and I hated her, so why on earth would I contribute to her college fund? It didn't make any sense. Also, I was going away to college myself in a few months, so I don't know how exactly she expected me to send money when I myself would need them to send me money. Even if hypothetically I did get a job there and started working to support myself, it seemed unfair to ask me to pitch in for my stepsister when I would probably need that money for personal use. I couldn't even say no because of the threat of getting kicked out, since I would definitely want to come back for the holidays and didn't want to stay on campus throughout the year, and I don't know if I'd even get approval for that. I'd basically be homeless once I'm done with college, and that was a terrifying thought. I mulled this over in my head and came to the conclusion that there was just no way I could make this work, and neither was this fair for me. But instead of arguing with my mother, I decided to talk to my grandparents this time. I didn't want to negotiate with my mom only to be let down in the end, and honestly, I just didn't think the argument would even be worth it. She was never going to see my side and would always only think about her favorite, not me. My mom had basically forbidden me from speaking to my grandparents, her parents. My dad's parents live out of state and were just occasionally in touch. She said that my grandparents were fragile and didn't need me troubling them, and I was only allowed to talk to them about safe topics, and I could only visit them with her, never unsupervised. I'd once dropped by their house unannounced in my junior year to spend time with them on my own, but when I came back and told Mom, she'd been hysterical, and I decided not to visit them by myself again because I didn't need that drama. I'd had a nice time at that place, though, and they didn't seem very sickly or fragile to me, but I didn't want to cross my mother, so I'd follow the rules she'd set for interacting with my grandparents until now. However, that day I knew that I would have to break the rules and go speak to them if I wanted them to help me convince my mother. My grandparents were probably the only people in the world who could force my mother to do something, and this time I really needed them on my side to avoid getting kicked out because there was just no way I was getting a job and working through college only to pitch in for my horrible stepsister's college fund. So after a while, I decided to talk to my mother and somehow get her to repeat the conditions she'd set for me so that I could record her saying it. I love my grandparents and I know they love me, but since I was going to them to ask for help to stand up against their own daughter, I thought it would be in my best interest to make sure I had all the proof I needed so that they'd believe me. I kept the sound recorder on and spoke to my mother, asking her to tell me exactly what she expected of me once I was in college, and she repeated herself. She sounded exasperated, but thankfully she didn't think much of it and didn't seem to suspect a thing. Then I told her I was going out with my friends, and I'd tell her my decision once I was back home. She seemed okay with that, and because it was my birthday, she didn't push much either and let me go. So then I went straight to my grandparents' house a few streets away and told them everything. And by everything, I mean everything. Initially, I'd only meant to tell them about the absurd demand that my mother had made and how she'd kicked me out if I didn't contribute. But soon enough, I found myself spilling over with emotions, and then I was just crying while I tried to explain my situation to them. I guess I wasn't dealing with my mother's rejection of me as well as I'd like to believe. I told them all about how badly I was treated at home, and they seemed shocked while I was talking because whenever I visited them with my mother, I seemed relatively happy and relaxed, but that was just a front that I was forced to put on because my mother didn't want my grandparents to worry about me or her because they were too old and sick. Honestly, I never bought that theory because my grandparents were just in their early 60s and looked absolutely healthy to me. I feel like the only reason my mother didn't want me to talk to them and be around them was because she was afraid that I'd blurt out the truth about her someday and her parents would get to know how she'd been mistreating me, her own daughter, for the sake of her stepdaughter. Then her parents would be furious with her, and she'd be in huge trouble, which is precisely what happened after I told my grandparents everything. They comforted me for a while and told me that they'd fix everything. I didn't know what exactly they meant by that, but my grandpa looked really pissed. Once I regained my composure, they handed me a $100 bill and told me to get out with my friends that evening because it was my 18th birthday, and I should make it special for myself. They promised me that they'd make everything right, and I wouldn't have anything to worry about by the time I was back, which made me feel a lot better. So I decided to hang out with a couple of my friends because they'd been trying to get me to come hang out with them that day anyway. I must have been out with my friends really late because I didn't want to go home, and also because I was finally celebrating my 18th the way it was meant to be celebrated. Around 9, I received a text from my grandparents asking me to come back to their place instead of going home, so I did exactly that. Surprisingly, I hadn't received any texts or calls from my mother even then, which was strange because if my grandparents had spoken to her regarding what I told them that day, then she would have been dying to confront me about it. So it seemed a little weird that she was so eerily silent. I went back to my grandparents' house at 10 o'clock, and once I freshened up, my grandparents sat me down and told me that they talked to my mother, and now I had nothing to worry about. They told me that they'd asked my family to leave the house they'd been living in so that they could transfer the ownership to me. Apparently, that house had been a wedding gift from my grandparents to my parents, and they'd been living there ever since. But today, once they learned how my mother had been treating me, they realized that they needed to do something about this. They talked to her and asked her nicely to take back whatever she'd said to me and treat me better. But instead of admitting that she'd messed up, she decided to be disrespectful and told my grandpa to mind his own business instead of interfering in matters he didn't understand. She actually believed that now that I was an adult, I needed to start earning and giving back to the family, or else I wouldn't have a place in her home anymore. That infuriated my grandpa because of how unfair it was, and after a really nasty argument, he told her that she needed to vacate that house since it was still legally his property as he'd never formally transferred the ownership to her, and he still had the power to evict her. So she could either choose to be a better mom to me or leave the house, and she'd chosen the latter, no surprises there. She told my grandpa that her priority was her own family now and not me, as if I wasn't a part of her family and wasn't related to her by blood, and said that she'd empty that house by the end of the week if that's what he wanted, then disconnected the call. So that was why I hadn't heard from my mother. My grandparents also explained that it wasn't just what I told them today that had made them take this drastic step, but it was how she'd been behaving with them for the past couple of years. Ever since she got married, she believed that her husband and her stepdaughter were the only family she needed now and would visit her parents only once or twice every 2 months. They've given up trying to make her visit more often, but they would ask her to at least let me talk to them or come visit them, and to that she'd always make up some excuse and claim that I was too busy, which I really wasn't. She just didn't want to let me come see my grandparents out of fear that I would tell them the truth. She'd very cleverly manipulated all of us into staying away from one another for her own selfish reasons. And now it had all finally blown up in her face because now she had to vacate the house she'd lived in for almost 2 decades, all thanks to her manipulation and deceitfulness. I was really upset that she decided to choose my stepsister over me, but I was even more disgusted and angry that she'd actually thought that this was all justified somehow. I was disheartened at the time, but I'd also given up any hope that my mother would ever love me as much as she loved my stepsister and had started to see her for the person she really was. I didn't expect anything from her anymore. I was actually kind of glad that I was spending the night at my grandparents' place because I absolutely didn't want to see or hear from my mother at the time. I hated the fact that I was her daughter, and I hated her for what she'd done even more. The next morning, I went back home with my grandpa to pack some of my clothes and the essential belongings so that I could move in and live with my grandparents until my mother and her family vacated the house. It was around noon, but nobody had left for work, and even my stepsister was at home. All of them looked angry and disappointed, but I didn't speak to them and walked straight past them to get to my room and pack my stuff up. My grandpa had accompanied me inside and helped me pack, but around 10 minutes into it, my mother came into the room and demanded to speak to me in person. I said no, but she kept insisting, so I finally caved and let her take me aside so that we could talk. She told me that she'd been bluffing on the phone with her dad, but she couldn't actually afford to move out on such short notice, and now she needed me to talk to Grandpa to fix this. I was appalled that she even had the audacity to make another demand for me after whatever she'd done, so I obviously said no right to her face, point blank, and told her that she'd lost the right to even speak to me after what she'd done. She'd made her choice and now she had to stick to it. And then she said that she didn't really mean for me to get hurt and was only trying to teach me to be responsible when she asked me to pitch in for my stepsister's college fund. She had tears in her eyes while she told me that if I just deemed her worthy of one conversation and instead of going straight to my grandparents to complain about her, then I would have known that my mom didn't actually mean anything she'd said. She only wanted to teach me to be responsible with my money, and all of the money that I would send for my stepsister's college fund would actually go into a separate account that she planned to let me have later on. If I talked to her about my feelings just once, then she told me the truth, and I would have known that she was never going to kick me out, and especially not over something as petty as this. But apparently I got her kicked out of her own home, and that really hurt her. She told me I was free to do whatever I wanted to, but asked me to remember that she did love me and always wanted the best for me. I was dumbstruck and had no idea what to say. It's been 2 days, and I haven't talked to anyone about this. I don't even know if my mom was being honest or not, but the guilt is just eating away at me. I can't talk to my friends about this, and I definitely can't talk to my family, so I'm here for answers. Was I wrong for complaining to my grandparents about my mother when she threatened to kick me out if I didn't pitch in for my stepsister's college fund? Update 1. Okay. So first of all, thanks for all the advice and kind words. I did tell my grandparents about what my mother had told me the other day, and he seemed really skeptical about it because he thought it was really unlikely that my mother intended to save that money for me and was definitely bluffing right now to manipulate me yet again so that I'd let them stay, and I agreed with my grandpa. I'd become a little emotional, but honestly, there was no way my mom had suddenly turned a new leaf. The only way to find out whether she was sincere or not was to put her to the test. On the off chance that she actually meant what she'd said the other day, so I called her and told her that I thought things over, but I still would prefer for my grandpa to transfer the ownership of the house to me now, just in case. She sounded a little shocked in the beginning and tried to reassure me that I had nothing to worry about. But when I insisted, she became hostile and started accusing me of not trusting her. So I argued with her, saying that I couldn't just trust her all of a sudden after years of being treated badly, and she ended up snapping at me, telling me to go to hell and that she didn't even want a daughter like me in the first place. And that just proved what I'd already known, that my mom was just being nice out of the blue so that she wouldn't get evicted, and my grandparents and I would let her own the house legally. Well, too bad she showed me her true colors, so that's not happening anymore. She can go to hell for all I care. But she doesn't want a daughter like me? Fine. She won't have me as a daughter anymore because I sure as hell wouldn't want a mother like her. Update 2. The legal process is finally complete, and the house is now officially mine. My mother has already started the process of moving out. Initially, she had just a week, but my grandparents and I were kind enough to extend that to 2 weeks, and now she has around 4 days to be gone. My grandparents are also planning to sell off the house they're residing in currently so that they can move in with me and take care of the house in my absence when I leave for college. I think it's a fabulous idea, and I can't wait to start my new life. Update 3. Hey, So this is probably going to be my last update for a while now that things have finally begun to fall into place for me. My mother moved out today, but not before she handed over the keys to me and reminded me very nastily that I'd regret this in the future. I don't understand why she's so bitter since she was lucky enough to find an apartment close enough to the school and her workplace on such short notice. It's a much smaller place, but she should learn to be grateful. Like I'm grateful for my wonderful grandparents and my friends who have been nothing but supportive of me ever since I let them know what I've been going through. I'm also thankful for you guys here because, in spite of being complete strangers, everyone here was really kind to me, and I truly appreciate that so much. I'm typing this out on my old laptop in my old room in my old house, but with a family who actually loves me now, and in a few months, I'll be moving away to start at a college of my choice. Now I'm finally living the life I always wanted, and I really couldn't be happier about it. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My ex-best friend who married my ex-husband hired me to make a cake for her son's birth. I, 33, just wanted to share this with everyone who was going through a divorce or a heartbreak for a similar reason. I married someone who I loved with all my heart. We met in college, and right after graduation we got married. I decided to stay home because my husband, 34, made a lot of money. I gave him everything, supported his business, cooked for him, cleaned for him, basically babied him a lot because I was in love with him. I thought if I was a good wife and nurtured him, he would love me back, and for like 5 years it was good. I discovered he was cheating on me when I found a random receipt from a hotel. I investigated a little and found out he was, in fact, cheating on me, and his AP was my best friend Kylie, 31. I was betrayed by 2 of my closest people. Kylie gave me a vague excuse that she didn't want to hurt me, but she just fell in love with him. His excuse was, "You do not make me feel special anymore. You have just got boring and let yourself go." I agree, I was a little chubby back then because of my medicines. Also, I was always too tired to work out. I tried the path of reconciliation but failed. He left me for Kylie. This whole incident made me realize who my real friends were and who were fake ones. There were people who were neutral, but only 2 of them, Josh and Marie, were on my side and cut off Kylie. I was really devastated. I felt like without him, I was no one. I lost my husband, my best friend, my house, my life. I stayed with Marie for a while. She offered me a small job in her catering business. I love food. When I was married, I would make different varieties of food for my ex-husband. Cooking was just very therapeutic to me during that time. Marie's mom gave me some useful advice. An average human lives for 75 years. You are already 27. Are you that stupid that you want to waste the rest of your life being sat over a man who never loved you? That thing really stuck with me. I have trust issues because of my husband's infidelity. I had trouble dating, so I skipped it for a while. I focused on working on myself. I socialized with a lot of people while I was catering and made a lot of connections. I always wanted to start a business of my own, and since I loved creating food, a customer I was catering for actually gave me an idea to start a baking business. My friends also helped me a lot. I built a pretty small yet successful baking business within a couple of years. I started to feel more like myself now that I was free. I didn't realize I had so much free time on my hands because I wasn't busy taking care of a large human. My house was clean. No one was putting dirty laundry on the floor. No one was telling me to make something else because they were not in the mood for a certain dish. Nobody put dirty dishes in the sink. I started to embrace this solitude. I know those things I mentioned are not something big, but it was a huge relief. Moreover, no one questioned me whenever I went out. I didn't have to answer anyone before going out. I could spontaneously go on a long drive, and I didn't have to ask for permission. I learned a new language within my free time. I focus more on family and friends who genuinely loved me, and getting dumped has made me see the red flags I missed in my marriage. I used that as a lesson to steer clear of any trash man in my life. I dated a few men, but they didn't seem nice to me, but it didn't bother me a lot. I am happy being single and carefree. I see my divorce as a blessing to me rather than a curse. I do feel alone sometimes, but recently I got a call from Kylie saying that she regrets marrying my ex because he never appreciates her and always puts the burden of everything on her. They have 2 kids now, but my ex doesn't help her with any chores. She is always tired and exhausted after taking care of 2 kids and an adult. It just made me realize that it would have been me if my husband didn't cheat on me with Kylie. I simply told her, "Well, you said you loved him, so he is your problem now. What's the point of coming to me?" That woman has the audacity to say she wanted a friend. I blocked her number. I don't want to be in their lives. Sometimes I feel like I missed my prime because I'm now 33. Feels too old to start over, but I still have hope for love one day. I am currently dating a guy who is also divorced like me because his wife cheated on him, so we will see how that goes. I 33 am in a bit of a dilemma. You see, my ex-best friend 31 had an affair with my ex-husband 34 when we were married. Our friendship fell apart right over there. I didn't have any contact with her until a month ago. She called me and said she is not happy with her life. I have moved on with my life. I don't need their shenanigans. I run a small baking business. It is relatively new. I only take orders for cakes on occasions like birthdays, graduation, or reunions, except for weddings. I have some plans to expand and also have a dream to open a bakery of my own one day. A few days ago, I get an order from my ex-best friend. She wanted me to make desserts for her son's first birthday, and she doesn't just want me to make a birthday cake. She also wants a dessert section at the birthday party. It is a huge order and the pay is good. It will be good for my business, but as you can see, she and I have a history. This made me question why she wants me to do it. My ex comes from a well-to-do family. He also has a high-paying job. She could easily hire the best baker in town. Why does she want me to do it? My business is not that big. It made me feel like she is trying to grab my attention or just trying to sabotage my business, or maybe she wants to talk to me after I shunned her the last time. On the other hand, the businesswoman inside me says to take it. I know I can do it. The party is huge. There will be many people from affluent backgrounds. I can promote my business to those people. It will boost my revenue as well. I am thinking if I just avoid her as much as possible, then it will be good, but I don't know. I am stuck in between. I need some good advice. My ex-best friend who married my ex-husband hired me to make a cake for her son's birth. Sorry to disappoint you guys. I accepted the order. It looked too good to pass it to someone else. Call me a greedy businesswoman all you want, but like you said, ask for advance payment. I did ask for it. They paid in advance. I always ask for advanced full payment. I also minimized the contacts with my ex-best friend. So far, the interaction between us has been through email, and also I have an assistant who is a family friend. He knows my situation and is a middleman. I am documenting everything. I know I am taking a huge risk with this, but I am willing to see where it goes. Also, I got to know hiring me was my ex-husband's idea, not hers. My ex heard about my service from a colleague of his and wanted to hire me. I haven't talked to my ex about this. Most of my communications have been with my ex-best friend. Nothing big happened. I am still working on it. I will post a full after all of this is done. Stay tuned. I decided to talk to my mom about it. I just needed her insights about this matter. She told me I should do what I want to do. My boyfriend also encouraged me to take the order. He says that if I had to stay to organize the dessert table, he would be there for me. I took the order, and it turns out it was my ex-husband's idea to hire me because one of his colleagues recommended my services to him, and it was sort of short notice, so I had to rush this anyways. I kept it strictly about business. I did take the payment in advance, just like some of you have mentioned. I always ask for advanced payments. I mostly maintained communication through email. I have an assistant who is also a family friend of mine to handle all communications. My ex-best friend tried many times to meet with me in person, but I told her to just email me because I did have cake orders for other people too. I only had to meet her one time in person regarding the order. She sent me the details of the party over the email, and like I mentioned, it was a huge order. I didn't just have to make a birthday cake for the baby. It was Pokemon themed. There were also cake pops, cupcakes, and macarons. Luckily, I had my friend Marie over for some help. Yes, I did pay her. So like usual, I went to deliver the cakes and other stuff for the party. There was already a table set at the venue. My boyfriend Josh, 35, came with me to support me and to keep me away from my ex-husband and ex-best friend as much as possible. As I was busy with myself, my ex approached me and said, "Hello, NGL." Seeing him after so many years, my heart just stopped. This man has given me the worst pain you could possibly give to a human. I am glad I held my composure. I also said hello back. He tried to have a small talk with me by saying that he is sorry about how things went down and what he said, and also that I looked better than the last time he saw me. Then he dropped a big bomb. He said all these years he has thought of me, wondering what I was doing, even though he is happy with his married life. I was silent. I didn't say a word. He just kept spewing that he misses me and my cooking. My homemade French onion soup is still his favorite. He misses that every time he gets sick with a flu. I didn't know what to say at that moment. Josh noticed that my ex was making me uncomfortable, and he rushed towards me with a fake emergency. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. After the table setting was done, I was about to leave. That's when I saw my ex-father-in-law along with other guests. He noticed me and came to give me a hug. My ex-father-in-law is a very humble man. In fact, he was the only man who was on my side when I was going through a divorce with his son. He looked really happy to see me and asked me how I was. He started to chat with me. I talked to him about my business, and he gave me some advice. He even talked to my boyfriend. He called Josh a pretty standard guy. Whatever that means. Ex-father-in-law was nice and said he would suggest my services to his friends too. He insisted that I stay until lunch is served. I said no a couple of times, but he managed to convince me. I only stayed for 1 more hour or so, but I was fine. I did notice that my ex-best friend was eyeing me from the corner. I was fine because Josh was beside me the whole time. I chatted with some guests. They appreciated my service. I didn't have any more conversations with my ex. I didn't even stay for the cake cutting. I left the first chance I got, but my assistant stayed to make sure everything was fine for the cleanup. It was overwhelming for me. I saw some of my old friends and my in-laws. My mother-in-law avoided me, and some of my old friends just said hello. Later that day, I got a message from my ex-best friend on my work email that she liked my service and that her guests really liked my cakes and desserts. She also said, "Sorry. That's not where it ends." I got to know from my friend Marie, who was still in contact with some of my old friend group, that my ex-best friend is not happy with her marriage. When my ex and her are in public, they would often fight a lot. They also fought on the day of their kid's birthday. To be honest, I just told her to not bring me the gossip about her. But the silver lining is I got a huge fat check. I can finally buy a new sugar printer or maybe a good quality oven. Also, I just want to appreciate my boyfriend, Joshua. He has been incredibly supportive of me. He has protected me from my ex and ex-best friend like a knight. I think he deserves his own cake from me. And I know a lot of you told me not to take it, but I guess I'm just a greedy Mr. Krabs who cares more about the money rather than being classy. But this is the last time I will be taking any orders from them. I know they have a 3-year-old daughter whose birthday will be in 2 months. I think they might try to hire me again. I will not take it if that happens. We have reached the end. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.